This week, the European Council will discuss the role of a digital single market to support growth. That strong role is clear to me. Across every sector of our economy, telecommunications and digital services drive performance, productivity and growth. From connected cars to cloud computing, from the smallest startup to the largest multinational, from new trading platforms to new internal communications, these tools help European companies innovate and grow. And remember that the Internet creates 5 jobs for every 2 lost. This is an economic and employment opportunity not to be missed. For this to happen, Europe needs a genuine digital single market, where online content, applications and services freely circulate. It needs strong and healthy ICT and Internet players, secure networks and a digitally skilled population. But ultimately, all those digital services depend on broadband connectivity. So high-speed networks are the backbone of the digital single market. Yet, compared to international competitors, Europe lags behind in providing those networks, fixed and wireless. That's not sustainable. We can no longer afford to ignore this growth boost. Countless businesses and citizens enjoy the benefits of the single market to travel, trade and transact free of borders and barriers. Now they need the communications to match. I'm pleased to announce we have achieved our goal to get every European digital by 2013, with full coverage by basic broadband. But we have a long way to go to reach our 2020 targets, including universal coverage by fast, next-generation broadband. Achieving that requires a significant investment in new networks, most of which needs to come from the private sector. And we are taking measures to make that easier. In a market which knows no borders, we can help operators smash barriers and think big. With higher regulatory consistency across the EU and a reduction of regulation as markets become more integrated and competitive. With better coordination of national spectrum assignment to help plan and bid across borders, common rules on public Wi-Fi and common fixed access products, harmonized consumer rules to boost protections without having to deal with multiple systems, a guarantee for net neutrality to safeguard the open internet for all and allow new high-quality specialized services, and new market deals that would end roaming in Europe once and for all, by bringing down borders, boosting economies of scale and helping telecom companies face a digital future. This proposal will boost innovation and investment. At a time when connectivity is a lifestyle product, we need to ensure consumers can benefit from innovative deals with fair prices for modern services they will value. In fact, a single telecom market is worth 0.9% of Europe's GDP, up to 110 billion euros per year, and even more in indirect gains for the wider economy. That proposal sits alongside other measures we are taking to stimulate more broadband for more people in Europe. The new recommendation on non-discrimination and costing methodologies will provide the stable and durable conditions needed for investment and guarantee fair competition. Our proposal to cut the cost of deploying high-speed networks could save up to 60 billion euros, for example through better coordination of civil works. And of course, in areas the private sector cannot supply, public support will have a role, particularly in less densely populated areas. Over the last 7-year period, the EU's cohesion policy has allocated over 14.6 billion euros for ICT projects, including for infrastructure, and that support will continue. As in the next funding period, ICTs will be one of the 4 priorities for structural and investment funding. This is a great opportunity offered to the EU member countries. That will be supported through our new guidelines on state aid for broadband. And I encourage all member states to take advantage of those opportunities to invest in a digital Europe, using those tools we have made available. We can also support our digital economy through the Connecting Europe facility. In spite of drastic funding cuts, we can still focus on online digital services. For example, so that national electronic identification can be used throughout the EU. And there will also be some funding for broadband through that facility, allowing the European Investment Bank to take on additional projects and attract new investors. Discussions on this proposal are going well, and I hope that the European Parliament and the EU member states can soon finalize that agreement. My dream is for a Europe of seamless connectivity, one where Europeans can enjoy innovative digital services over fast digital networks. This is essential for building tomorrow's growth, for creating tomorrow's jobs, and creating our digital future, built on a solid broadband bedrock. I hope EU leaders give a strong signal so we can start building that connected, competitive continent.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my great pleasure to bring some perhaps more boring details to the vision that my commission has just given to you. It is, as Ericsson introduced to us earlier this morning, about visionary investment. And I'm going to concentrate on those two words in this short intervention. For those of you who left the session not convinced that broadband drives competitiveness, we definitely went beyond pure correlation on this. There is causality between broadband and competitiveness, and it can bring considerable benefits to the European economy. Around this concept, we build a vision. Many of you know it. It's called Digital Agenda for Europe, setting a certain number of targets in taking advantage of the new digital world. Some of us told us that, these targets were really not ambitious enough. Some people said they were way over-ambitious. I still remember having heard from certain telecom companies that broadband demand is never going to pick up, to bring demand and use at the level of 100 megabits per second. Remember the slides from this morning? I believe we need to really be ambitious in our vision. Some of our use targets are very close to being realized, but the investment in networks is lagging behind. The Commissioner referred that basic broadband is with us, and we are very happy to announce that. But please remember that the vast majority of ambitious services that we are considering today cannot be delivered at very, very slow networks. And our accounting of basic broadband starts at a very, very low level. There are many countries and regions in Europe that do not have fast networks. And for the moment, they do not have really a good hope of getting these networks, because we face decision-making which is not focusing on the key success, which was defined as visionary investment. Investment that is based currently on the business case is not going to unlock innovation that we need for the future. The European Commission obviously doesn't have an enormous toolbox to influence the market, but we do have some tools, and we try to use them to the best advantage. The key guidance for us is the risk return. That is the concept that's known to all of you. Nothing gets built until return is considerable and sufficient to make investors actually dedicate the money to a particular project. However, we understand risk and return perhaps wider than regular investors would and regular companies would. To us, return on investment in broadband goes way beyond what can be monetized in a short term. Hence, both the market framework and the regulatory elements that drive investment and competition in it are accompanied by certain suggestions on funding and financing. Let me take you through each and every one of them. As the Commissioner rightly said, it would be difficult to imagine that public funding can deliver connectivity to the needs of the new economy. We do realize that the vast majority of investment will come from the private sector. However, certain areas, especially areas that are out of the beaten track, or the areas where competition does not push for investment for competitive reasons, will need certain support. We would like that support to be unlocking private sector interest and not replacing it. Hence, the European Structural Investment Fund that are being planned for the new financial perspective will have a considerable opportunities for companies to join forces with the public sector and deliver connectivity where short-term financial interests are not yet present. We will also enable it on the reduced, and here the vision and the financing provisions unfortunately did not go hand in hand. We will also enable it through the remaining funds in the Connecting Europe facility, which will provide access to longer-term financing that is available for such projects. We have actually already started. Some of you may be aware of the fact that a pilot project has been established with the European Investment Bank for infrastructure financing, and broadband is eligible under that, and that is a project bond pilot. We are open for business if any of you is considering such projects. And obviously, the EIB itself, the European Investment Bank, the policy-driven financial institutions for Europe, has recently been given additional resources to finance projects, including infrastructure projects, including in particular broadband. In areas where public sector investment is necessary, we've modernized the state aid framework to ensure that in any area, even in the area which was traditionally considered urban or black, if there is a step change possibility that realizes non-economic interests, public funds could be involved in financing the network. The key element is transparency and predictability, and ensuring that we enhance the private sector involvement and not replace it. Furthermore, private sector will need regulatory certainty. For a number of years now, we've been trying to discuss what exactly regulatory certainty means. It cannot mean, in the world where change is so fast, it cannot mean that the regulatory framework is static. It has to evolve and change, not trying to replace the vision of the private sector, but to enable it. Therefore, for projects that build new networks and do build them with a view of being an enabler, that means allowing as many users as possible rather than restricting use, there's obviously no need to block the natural interplay of risk and return. We believe the market in these areas can shape the right return on such investments. And in the same spirit of not harming the investment drive there's this in the private sector, we have introduced legislation which will reduce the cost of broadband deployment. Europe is, unfortunately, a collection of rules and tendencies and human behaviors that's quite varied in that sense. I think that the winner of the game is a country which I'm not going to name, which has 32 permits in order to start a network investment. That is definitely not a role we have for investors in network to run around and try to get so many permits. It is also important that we increase the synergies between different network infrastructures and different investors working in there. It is also important that our new building regulation assumes that network connectivity is as important as access to water or electricity. And finally, the details of it the Commission has already outlined to you, the new proposal for the single market in electronic communication, the stepping stone to what is a real single market of a digital nature, a market where any company, let's say cloud company, can go ahead and use the access to networks and roll out the product that is developed in Finland, covering a variety of other European countries. So we do not have a situation like at the Russia-Poland border where we actually have to change the undercarriage of the train in order to use the network in another country. It is important that we get a more coherent access to spectrum, and we know that spectrum goes beyond borders much more easily than certain politicians would. And finally, it is also important, and perhaps that was indicated, that Europe becomes simpler to understand for people who look at large-scale investment and involvement in Europe, that we have harmonized end-user rights, that every new activity on the market does not require from the people understanding a new system. And finally, for those of you who travel a lot, obviously, you will be happy to know that the same package brings a facilitation of the movement that will, in the end, we hope, eliminate roaming and make the digital single market the reality. If we are to look at these elements, you can ask yourself, how much is enough? Well, we will never know how much is enough. But the issue is that we are trying, within the limited mandate that the European Commission has, to ensure that we provide all the conditions that are necessary for the seamless connectivity. Thank you.